Okay, so I think we can start now. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining this action-focused discussion that will showcase innovative approaches to people-powered finance. This event is part of the London Climate Action Week and organized by Energize Africa. So thank you, Lisa, and your team for hosting us today. My name is Ian De Cruz, and I am the Global Director of P4G. P4G is a global platform pioneering partnerships that provide green growth solutions in developing countries. We look to translate country commitments and priorities into action on the ground that can create jobs, drive sustainable development, and climate action. We've just had a recent, very successful summit at the end of May hosted by the Republic of Korea, where more than 67 world leaders united and spoke about taking bold climate action to reach a net zero future for all. They also spoke about the need for increased financing for developing countries. At the core of our mission is to co-create and accelerate partnerships with innovative new business and finance models that can draw private sector investment and deliver impact on the ground in developing countries. And we've done this in a pipeline of more than 50 partnerships across food, water, energy, cities, and the circular economy. And Energize Africa is one of our inaugural P4G partnerships starting in 2018, and it exemplifies the kind of innovation we invest in. It is a scalable model that shows a clear path for individuals to take action and invest in small and medium enterprises in sub-Saharan Africa. It is also one that can be replicated across regions and sectors, and there is a sister partnership that P4G is also funded called Plus Plus, with a similar model tailored to transform the food and agricultural systems rather than just in energy, and is looking to do so globally. So today you will hear from Energize Africa and other businesses and organizations and funders employing new models that are intended to rapidly scale climate finance for emerging markets. We have an excellent group of practitioners and doers today in our panel discussion who will share how they are bridging the investment gap, explain what they need to do to scale these approaches at the speed required in this decade of action, and how this can be done practically, and how you can participate in that as well. So we'll be kicking this off with an introductory question to all panelists before bringing them together for a panel discussion. Following the panel discussion, we'll be taking questions from the audience, so please enter your questions in the chat box. This webinar will be recorded, and a link to the recording will be sent to all registrants in a follow-up email. While we will be discussing investments, the information should not be seen in any way as financial advice, and if people have questions about their individual circumstances, they should contact an independent financial advisor. So without further ado, let's introduce our excellent group of panelists who can share how each one of them are playing a critical role for people-powered finance. So we have Lisa Ashford, CEO of Energize Africa. As I said, I've known Lisa since the start of P4G. Energize Africa was one of the first partnerships we funded back in 2018. Lisa is a dynamic leader with an ambitious vision to build a cleaner and more inclusive world. We look forward to hearing from Lisa on Energize Africa's growth so far and its next steps and needs for scaling. We also have Sneha Shah, Managing Director of East Africa, Azure Technologies. Sneha is an industry leader with deep experience in business and investment. We look forward to hearing from you, Sneha, on your new approaches that Azure is bringing to the market, one of the pioneers of pay-as-you-go solar power in Kenya, and how the finance raised from Energize Africa allows you to grow and empower communities, especially for women in East Africa. Iyongwa Mashangal, CEO and co-founder of LTEC. LTEC is a market leader in solar home systems in the Democratic Republic of Congo. We'll learn from Iyongwa how LTEC is expanding access to clean and reliable energy for off-grid households and what they need to scale these offerings. We also have Stephanie Jones, Program Manager for Good Energies Foundation. Good Energies funds organizations and businesses working in clean energy and tropical forest protection. Stephanie will share the innovative models that Good Energies is scaling and what the sector needs to meet its decarbonization goals. And finally, but not least, we have Stephen Hunt, Energy and Innovation Advisor for the UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. Stephen leads energy innovation programs at the office and can share some of the new financing models they're supporting and how they're driving innovation on the road to COP26. So the first question to our panelists, and this is specifically to you, Lisa, Stephen, and Stephanie, what are the innovative ways you are working to help bridge this climate financing gap and deliver the kinds of financial products that sustainable organizations need and people want to invest in? So over to you, Lisa.
Thanks, Ian, and welcome everybody. Great to be here. So Energize Africa was very much born out of the innovative finance program that UKAID was running, and specifically it was to accelerate energy access in sub-Saharan Africa using innovative forms of finance. And we ran with this baton, supported by UKAID and Virgin Unite, and set up a platform specifically to raise finance from the crowd to provide flexible and affordable working capital to some of the organizations like those that we're speaking to today, Azure and Altec, where they are providing pay-as-you-go solar to domestic clients in sub-Saharan Africa, and enabling people, individuals and households to utilize energy services, whether that be light, whether that be charging mobile phones, whether that's for small businesses to run their products, and we'll hear a lot more from those organizations in a while. And so far we've had over £22 million invested through the platform, and UKAID has enabled us to blend in finance to provide first loss guarantees, to match funds the crowd, and excuse me, that's really enabling us to boost our efforts and get more money on the ground, which has resulted in over 500,000 people getting access to clean and affordable energy so far. And also we'll hear from Stephanie today, who's helping us to continue to look at different innovative forms of finance and structuring to allow us to scale up, get more individuals investing through the platform, but also to do our scale up and growth in a sustainable way that is creating the right forms of finance for the organizations, and also the right risk profile for the investors.
Thanks so much, Lisa. And it's just so empowering in the context of global pandemic, where you have contraction of capital in developing countries, to know that people in the UK can be empowered to invest directly with entrepreneurs like Sneha and Yonghwa. So thanks for that, Lisa. Over to you, Stephanie.
Great, thanks. So as a small foundation, or even if I were a very large foundation, we don't have enough philanthropic capital to bridge this gap on our own, nor are we set up logistically to do lending directly to the many enterprises and companies that need all kinds of different debt of different quantities. So we look for intermediaries and leverage, which is really important. And so working with Energize Africa was a way for us to turn our grant money into what the market actually needs. A lot of startup companies don't want grant financing because it sends a message that they're not ready for commercial loans. So working with Energize Africa, we provided grant funding to them, and they could then turn it into debt capital. And they used our funding specifically for some of the things Lisa mentioned, first loss, guarantee, match funding, to match the private individuals putting in their investment, and to test some of these different things, whether or not a first investor sort of bonus would motivate more investors to come into this sector, which is perceived as highly risky, but we're convinced isn't that risky. And we're in discussions now about trying to figure out if there's a way to help Energize Africa disperse loans in US dollars while they still take in British pounds from their investors. The enterprises on the ground would find US dollars much more useful, but we need to try to figure out a way to reduce exchange rate risk and make sure that the enterprises and the entrepreneurs aren't the ones holding all of that risk. So our money is used to test a lot of these things, and then when they work well, we get a lot of leverage because our money is only a small portion of the overall loans that go out.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. And in our experience in P4G, people like yourselves who are actually using this capital to catalyze real commercial investments, but with patience, it is rare. And so really appreciate that innovation you're bringing to the market. And finally, Stephen, from a UK FCDO perspective.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think if you're thinking about COP26, and Glasgow coming up, I think people are looking for sort of government commitments, and that's a big part of it, and that's about nations deciding to commit to net zero or to commit to funds, and that's a big part of the story. But I think what is important about this session is that it's not all about what governments can do with the tax money. It's also about what we can all do. And I think when we're in FCDO, we're programming UK aid, we're very aware that, just as Stephanie said, you can't resolve the problem with that money. You need to use that money in catalytic ways to enable markets, to enable people, to enable industries to change and to make their own investments. So when we started exploring the crowdfunding space through the CrowdPower program, was our research and innovation program, and we really saw a lot of potential. And I think Energize Africa has really reinforced the view that if you put relatively small amounts of funding into creating platforms to enable people-powered finance, then you can achieve that leverage. You can engage more people and more money. So I think that's been a very positive and interesting experience, and we're continuing to explore this area, still working with Energize Africa, but also through CrowdPower, more generally looking at other aspects of the financing picture, the use of guarantees, the use of what we can do about equity, smaller amounts of equity, like enabling local companies. How can we engage diaspora, for example, in this kind of picture? So I think there's a whole kind of range of kind of space, but I think what Energize Africa has shown is that there's appetite out there. There's real interest from people who aren't necessarily prepared to wait for the governments or the pension funds or the big institutional investors to make their moves, and we want to see that as well. But people are taking the chance to do things themselves. And I think that's a really positive part of the story, and one that we've been really happy to be supporting.
Terrific. Thanks so much, Stephen. And again, to see this innovation and risk-taking from governments in new instruments, I think is part of what we need in this decade of action. So we have pioneers bringing the investment, architecture together, and we also have pioneers in Sneha and Yong who are looking to do this in the field, in action. So the next question is really directed to both of you, and the question is really, what are the financing challenges that you have been experiencing as a sustainable business? What has been the impact of being able to access people-powered finance and helping your organization scale and grow? So if I can start with you first, Sneha, from Azure, that would be excellent.
Sure. So first of all, yeah, I mean, I don't think there's that many challenges. It is much more of an opportunity, and the potential is so huge out there that actually the additional financing and having the individual investors actually participate in this, make an impact, and at the same time benefit. That would be very welcome. So just a quick background about Azure Technologies. So yeah, we are one of the pioneers in what we call the pay-as-you-go solar or off-grid solar sector within Africa. I am based in Nairobi, and I run 5 countries in East Africa based out of here. Azure is actually an offshoot of the University of Cambridge, so that's where the technology came from around 8 years ago. And out of the UK, it's not only the technology innovation, but also the finance innovation that we're doing. And I'm the guy running the distribution here. And we've won multiple awards for this, including the Thomas Edison Award. For the last 3 years in a go, we've been ranked as the top 100 fastest growing companies by Financial Times and the Sunday Times. And so far, we have connected more than 200,000 households. We continue growing. And the growth, as I said, is the potential is immense. If you look at Kenya, which is a world-leading market, not only mobile money was invented here, but it's one of the pioneers in the pay-as-you-go solar sector. So far, with the strides we've made, I would say around 20% of the population has been connected with off-grid. I mean, the grid penetration will still remain at around 20 to 25%. So there is still huge potential for further growth here. And also the government has been very forthcoming, and they've made the off-grid sector as part of their 2022 electrification strategy. So that's the kind of impact that we have made, and that is thanks to already some of the funding initiatives that we have, especially with crowdfunding, and we have different levels of operating there. So one is sort of direct investments, but also we have actually got some structures in place where we have some BFIs like Electrify, where also UKAID has participated, coming in with sort of concessionary debt. Azure also to show our skin in the game. We have participated in the first loss with our equity as well. And then of course the crowd comes on top of that. So that's the kind of innovation that helps us to really scale up. We're not tying up the funds with our own balance sheet. We have SPVs with off-balance sheet structures, again, showing the scale. And the impact that we've made is not only by providing power, but also we're providing the appliances that go with that. And some real case studies are with COVID. Last year, many schools were shut. Currently in the rural areas with the Delta variant, schools are still shut, but children are still able to study because in the rural areas, they have access to solar-powered televisions, and the educational content is then transmitted via satellite, which is what we are providing with our financed infrastructure. And the final point is we are also not only impacting the SDG goals for example, livelihood and power, but also the gender equality. And we have an initiative called Brighter Lives in place, where we also have a partnership with Unilever to really educate the women entrepreneurs who become our agents, and within the communities, they help basically on a viral basis spread our solutions to really increase the penetration and help the government reach its electrification strategy.
Thanks so much, Sneha. And it's wonderful to see in the global pandemic, the innovation and pioneering spirit actually extends beyond energy to actual things like education for children. So wonderful to see that. Also with you, Yong, can you please explain how you have looked to really deal with the challenges, but how this people-powered finance has helped you with what you're doing in Congo?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for the interesting question. So if I may start with a little bit of the background. I'm Yongo Mashangao, the co-founder CEO of LCAW Group. We are the market leader in the promotion of solar product or solutions in the DRC. And we are currently operating in 22 provinces out of the 26 of the country. And we have so far distributed more than 220,000 solar products to off-grid household and electrified household in the country. if we consider the average of 5 people per household, we have so far created the impact of more than 1,200,000 households who are currently using our solutions now. And we have this ambitious goal. We would like to distribute 2 million modern energy solutions, including solar solutions, by 2025 or 2030. And in the process, create 5,000 jobs and create around 10 million people's lives impact. So we are, as I've said, we are currently leading in terms of promoting the solar pay-as-you-go business in the country. And we are putting in place innovative pay-as-you-go business models, focusing on enabling poor off-grid households and small businesses or institutions to get access to our solutions. And the reality statistics are still showing up this very moment that in the DRC today, we are more than 80 to 90% of Congolese people living without access to electricity. And the households connected to the national grid are still suffering from power blackout of hours, days, weeks, even months. So the opportunity is huge. I can say there is this untapped market opportunity for the modern energy industry, for creating millions of people's lives impact and wealth in the process. And specifically speaking, we are very grateful to the funding of Azures Africa, because this has greatly helped us not only to increase the customer base, the number of households that are being connected thanks to the products, but also the because we started Altec in July 2013, and the serious challenge we have been facing was about the inventory financing. So we have been distributing solar lanterns to off-grid households, schools, and health institutions. But the serious challenge, we have been relying on our savings to be able to place the next orders. And we were not really exposed to the funding at the international level as such. So the most important thing with the funding of Azures Africa was that to attract now, considering the challenging business environment in the DRC. So thanks to the funding from Azures Africa, now we can see a number of potential investors getting interested to come in the country and start investing. So that's very, very important for us, because it wasn't easy. We just relied, of course, thanks to the support of persistent capital. We also had some small grants, but getting the funding, to the amount of millions of US dollars, it's really thanks to the Azures Africa support. And we are now expecting to, the funding be contributing to the impact of more than 15,000 households, as we are distributing. And as I'm saying, the need is still huge, because we have millions of people living without access to electricity. And when they see in their neighborhood people using our solar homes systems with televisions, air clippers, and the fans, it's really, really interesting. So we are receiving a lot of potential customers who are even registering before we get the product. And for us to get the consignment, it takes around 3 months to 4 months. So it's not that easy. So we are having a lot of customers who are demanding for our product. And the most important aspect we are focusing now on is inventory financing, so that we are able to put the product available to our customers at any time they're in need of. So this is what I can say in a nutshell, that really your funding has been greatly assisting us as we are growing this green business with high growth potential in terms of creating millions of people's lives impact, but also wealth in the process.
Thank you. It's really great to see how catalytic funding, from Azures Africa as an example, and its direct source to you really helps for small, medium enterprises on the ground doing the work. So a really heartfelt and very tangible example of that impact directly. So we now bring this to a panel discussion, but fantastic to see the questions coming through the chat box. The panelists are really trying to answer it in real time, and we'll try and incorporate that into our questions as well. So the next question to all of you really is, how do we scale what is being done now as we look forward in this decade of action? So, we've taken it from contributions as small within the UK context of £50 to now tens of millions. How do we take it from the tens of millions to the hundreds of millions, and then ultimately to be a mainstream financial product, not only in the United Kingdom, but to other countries? So maybe we can start that in reverse order this time, and work from some of the people in the field, and we share a little bit of your vision for how you can scale this through your particular business. But if you maybe can take a step back and also say more businesses like you can be crowded into the Democratic Republic of Congo, in Kenya, within the continent as well and beyond. But Yonghwa, could you start maybe with how you could scale this within your business, but also potentially within the context of yours in the Democratic Republic of Congo?
Yeah, thank you very much for this. That's a great question. So I will repeat the same thing about the needs. So far, we still have the high need within the country, in the Democratic Republic of Congo. For sure, because we are so far distributing our product in 65 market outlets in these 22 provinces. And the idea is about opening our market outlet in all the villages of the DRC. And I'm insisting. And this is mainly because in the 21st century, we still have kids millions of kids in the DRC who have not yet seen any bulb lighting in their household. So these people are still relying on the traditional, expensive and toxic sources of energies. They are using kerosene lamps. They are using these small measures of palm oil. They are using really very, very expensive and very risky, sources of energies. And we are intrinsically motivated to make sure that these people, we get them, out of using these toxic and very expensive sources of energies. So for us, currently, it's about the inventory financing. We are seriously working in improving our, applications, which are greatly supporting us in terms of, managing our stocks, our inventories, but also the distribution of product and the cash collection. So we're investing a lot in improving our technologies, our tech apps, as you go tech apps, so that we are even integrating, the accounting software to the apps we are using, because we are currently using for solar lanterns, Angaza, as you go technology support, and for solar home systems, we are using loan asset management tool app, and we are now using M-Pesa. We have so far signed the memorandum of understanding with Vodacom M-Pesa, and our customers are paying via mobile money. They are paying via M-Pesa, and we are extending this even to Orange Money and to Airtel Money. So this is what we are doing for solar home systems. We are also encouraging our customers who are using our solar lanterns to start paying also using the mobile money services, including M-Pesa, Orange Money, and the Airtel Money, services. So the idea is that if we have product available, if we have the stock at least of 6 months, already for us to be able to respond positively to the increasing demand of our customers. And of course, we are connected because my long-term friend and business partner, Malangwa Shkala, both of us are Mandela Washington Fellows, and we are very well connected in all countries of Africa. So it's very easy for us, as we are satisfying the market need of the DRC, we can also expand to other neighboring countries. But internally speaking, we are really improving. We still need really today, the inventory financing. If we have the money to get the stock available, then we will really scale the business to hundreds of millions of dollars, and also dozens of millions of people's impact.
Terrific. How about, so I think one of the things we're hearing is how you can scale that and increase the education about people and to bring pay as you go. I think there's something there about also the role government can also play to really activate and change and pivot into these kind of solutions. It's great to have these solutions, but how can governments come? So Stephen, a bit of a suggestion that from a UK perspective, supporting countries like Kenya, like Democratic Republic of Congo, do you have a sense of how the scaling can not only be done by how you fund, but how you encourage some of these programs in countries like Democratic Republic of Congo and Kenya, Stephen, as part of the scaling impact?
Yeah. I mean, I mean, there's a lot of work been going in over the last, particularly over the last decade, and we've seen real great expansion in the solar market in Africa, and it has been kind of born out of a lot of different kinds of interventions, whether it's quality assurance that's been happening, whether it's a lot of work on policy, working with governments. I mean, it wasn't obvious at the beginning that solar was going to be a cost-effective alternative in many contexts to the grid. So there was a kind of a process of people kind of becoming aware of that, seeing the evidence, getting the feedback, and then policy changing. But I think now, if you look across Africa, there's a very strong sense that solar, mini grids, all these kind of modern and lower cost solutions are now part of that picture. They're not all of the picture, but they're absolutely part of that picture. And once that happens, you start to see things happening like VAT exemptions, or better protection, policy and sort of regulatory protections for the companies, and all that helps kind of improve the investment climate for those companies. So that then helps to bring down the cost of capital. I mean, a lot of the challenges is that companies are working in very hard places, which are generally hard to attract investment into. So that then means the cost of capital is high, which makes it hard to deliver low-cost products. So this is the kind of cycle we're trying to break out of. And what's great about crowdfunding is that you're allowing, it's not just the kind of the institutional position, maybe we don't fund in Zambia, but with retail investing, you can say, well, do you want to fund in Zambia? And how are we going to try and make that possible? And then we can add some risk mitigation, and we can do that kind of thing. So I think in the end, a lot of work does go into that, improving the investment climate. But then you still have to have those investments, those pioneering investments happening. And I was really encouraged to hear the story from DRC about how Energize Africa support, like getting those first few several $100,000, maybe $1 million loans, that then lets you have a different conversation with the banks, or with the kind of the pioneer lenders who might only start at $1 million. So I think it's all part of this kind of building up, and we've seen some great stuff in CrowdPower as well, with equity as well, at the kind of the very ground floor, helping companies get the 50K, the 80K they need to get started. And that's all part of that kind of sort of momentum that I think we need to be supporting.
Yeah, that's very helpful, Stephen. We see this too in P4G, that sometimes you just have to prove the concept, right? And you have to prove the concept quickly. And what we see is there are entrepreneurs who are really taking that risk and can do this very quickly, sometimes much, much quicker than what governments can and others. And that's the pioneering spirit we want to see. And almost in a sort of renegade kind of way, almost retrofit back that sort of solution with confidence, with scale, back into a legitimacy into the financial system that I know Lisa will talk to, but ultimately becomes a mainstream financial product, not just an innovative product on the side. So I think this is part of an answer. I think Harold's asking about, there is complexity, but how does this fit into the entire finance ecosystem that we'll come to? Sneha, would you like to share, your vision? You're already in 5 countries, so that's scaling already, but within your business, but this as a business model for all those other entrepreneurs out there, to say why this is a good bet to crowd in more businesses like yours. Could you explain how you see this scaling from your personal business, but as a business model itself as well as a pioneer? Sure,
Ian. So, I think this is a journey. When we started to prove the concept, we got some small grants from the UK aid and other DFIs. And then once we had raised some equity in order to get the first few customers, we were using our own equity to basically provide the financing to the customers to pay over time. And then crowdfunding came in, and that helped us to go to the next level. And with a couple of platforms, we've done multiple campaigns, and then now we're looking at risk mitigation as well, because we have large portfolios. Within that, We are providing these services to rural Africans, and some of them are bottom of the pyramid. So due to different conditions, some of them could be external. For example, in Zambia, we saw a shock last year with the fall of the forex of the kwacha against the hard currencies. So how is that absorbed? So now doing these kind of structured kind of financing that we're providing, where crowdfunding is one part. We are providing our first loss equity participation, and then some of the DFIs are also providing their participation. So that means for the crowd, their exposure is kind of de-risked. And then it's basically a win-win, because we're not only relying on say charity money, but for the crowdfunders, there's a return they can make, as well as having an impact. So there's a lot of work that's gone into this, and it's now about basically doing more of the same. And also, Azure's approach is actually to work, although we're a British company, we work within the ecosystem. So, we work with local distributors. I explained earlier, we're working with Unilever to also enhance women entrepreneurs. So, then this basically kind of spreads quite wide, and you can imagine sort of the economic impact this can have, especially to the rural population. So, before, when we were seeing the urbanization happening, sort of rural to urban migration, now, the people living in the rural parts, they don't have any need to come to the urban centers. And the crowdfunding so far has been used to provide, say, the power, the lighting. I explained how we're doing the television, and then it's about now connecting the rural population to the internet, or the gig economy. And something that we're currently piloting is, for example, extending using the crowdfunding to other devices, for example, financing smartphones. So the scaling is not only about going to multiple countries, but within the individual countries, there is huge impact that's still is there to be made.
Thanks, Neha. Then over to you, Stephanie, in terms of the scaling, tens of millions into the hundreds of millions, hopefully, then beyond into the billions, and then maybe into the trillions. But as part of that catalytic vision, how do you see that scaling really happening within this type of business model? And I think there's a sort of question by reference of, is this really helping with the equity gap? I mean, that seems to just keep getting bigger and bigger. And how can this trend be reversed through the sort of work you're doing in finance?
Yeah, so I think it's really important to keep the larger context in mind, that the people-powered finance, I mean, all finance is people-powered at some point, right? But the retail investor side of this, it is only one part of what's needed, just as individual behavior change is actually a small part of what we need on climate action. But people are looking for agency, and when they can put their savings and their pension money into doing something good in the world while making a return, that gives them agency, which also inspires them to take on other climate action. So I think it's a gateway to other kind of climate action. So it's not just spurring the commercial finance that we hope will come into this, but it's also a way to motivate people to individual climate action, and call out their governments to to make the changes that are needed. So, but on specifically how retail investment is scaling here, we are seeing additional platforms similar to Energize Africa emerge, which are then accessible to retail investors. So, and we have a number of partners that are developing things or are already on their way. I mean, Charm Impact is also a UK retail investor platform, but it's aiming at a different part of the sector. So locally owned women founders, even smaller startups. And so I think that's an important part of the sort of capital capital pathway that enterprises go on. Energy Peace Partners is another of our partners, which is specifically looking at, not necessarily the climate and emissions benefits, but the peace benefits of renewable energy certificates in markets. And with time, that can also be accessible to retail investors or retail donors, depending on how people want to engage. And then another partner of ours, Energy Web, is harnessing blockchain to create ways for individual buyers to participate in the renewable energy certificate market globally, and specifically in developing countries, and with decentralized renewable energy, which currently isn't part of the global renewable energy certificate. So we see the multiplication of platforms is probably a more likely way to scale than just, Energize Africa becoming a $10 billion platform, which, people like choice, and they like choice not only of different platforms, but also the specific kind of impact they're trying to have out in the world. Some people might want a specific geography, and that's what they're going to choose, or they want to make sure that their gender benefits, or that their investment is going to locally founded companies and things like that. So I think that's the most likely path to scale that we're seeing.
Great, thanks, Stephanie. And I actually asked Lisa this question, as I do for all our P4G partnerships, about what is your vision for your business and what you're wanting to do. And Lisa really reflected your answer, which is she wasn't looking to rule the world, but really to catalyze a new form of thinking about bringing impact, development, and investment together, but to really catalyze even more of these models coming forward. But this is about really just changing the structure fundamentally to create these pathways for direct investment in impact, as we're seeing. So Lisa, over to you. Scaling, how do you look to scale? There was someone who was from Australia, my home country, saying, how can you take this to places like Australia? So could you answer how you see that ability to scale this type of model in other countries as well, as part of your answer, Lisa?
So I think, Stephanie's point is very well made, that, there is a demand and a need as a sector to provide different forms of financing in this, I think, what we've called the sort of finance continuum, right from when the companies are very early stage to when they first receive equity, to when they need working capital, and then that needs to scale up, which enables them to get more equity, which, so there is a long journey here, and there will be different players in the market who help to fulfill that need. And hopefully, by working together, it means that there will be a fairly seamless journey for the organizations who are on the ground doing the work, and they'll be able to, be enabled to take that growth path in a least painful fashion, which is what we all hope for. And then obviously that then translates into huge benefits on the ground in terms of those people who are enabled to get affordable clean energy. So in terms of the scalability, yes, we're looking at different sectors, so not just energy, but productive use of energy. That also enables us to look perhaps a bit further afield in terms of agri-tech. We're looking at different sectors and different geographies, so we can look beyond Africa. We're in about 15 different countries at the moment, but we recently also funded first projects in India. And there's a lot more that can obviously be done internally to speed up the process, to allow us to take on more businesses faster, to allow them to continue to raise finance with us over the course of their life. And also we see that there's need for technical assistance as well to help these organizations to grow, not without growing pains sometimes. And to the extent that organizations like us, funded by organizations like Stephanie's, and Stevens to help bridge that gap. But the model is totally replicable in different geographies from an investor point of view as well. You're totally right. What works in the UK, as long as the regulatory framework works, could work in Australia. I won't go as far as to say it would work in the US, because that's a totally different ballgame, but across Europe as well. And I think you are seeing more geographically focused platforms popping up. And I think by getting more of the blended finance, institutional and philanthropic capital coming in alongside the retailer finance will allow us to expand significantly, and the whole sector as a whole hopefully will be lifted up, and that's what we want to see.
Terrific. That's so helpful, and I think we're really trying to combine the excellent questions coming through the Zoom chat in real time, both in our verbal answers, but also our sort of written answers on the side too. So just really, I think maybe in looking to really get the next question asked of barriers, so there's an element of these are small, medium enterprises doing things off grid. How does that really start to create the scale of impact where these off-grid solutions can be part of mainstream energy solutions, maybe within a distributed energy market, and that in that way really create the legitimacy of these businesses that can maybe directly be plugged into main grid solutions. And the other thing we've seen is the innovation, where almost these become networks. So this excess energy can be used by consumers in different ways. Part of the thing we're seeing as an emerging new trend is even the electrification of transport, and in many of these contexts through 2 to 3 wheelers. So we see a convergence of energy systems, transport systems, off-grid to on-grid happening. But maybe to a couple of our entrepreneurs in the field, how do you see that market emerging in your context of what is being done off-grid? There's some skepticism of, is this really scaling? Can this become mainstream? Is it going at the speed required in this decade of action? So maybe Yonghwa, if you could give a response to that, and Sneha first.
Yeah, sure. So in terms of barriers to scaling, I think that first of all, the good thing is that the concept has been proven in a fairly short space of time, because really this market has been vibrant over the last 5 years. I think Stephen has put some links on the chat in terms of some actual figures in terms of how many people have actually benefited in the emerging markets from this off-grid solutions. But while these things have largely started in East Africa, they're now expanding to places like DRC, where Yonghwa is, and West Africa and Southern Africa. One of the key so prerequisites is availability of mobile money, and that is also spreading. It has taken some time for some of the other markets beyond East Africa to catch up. Regulation has played a part. So, for example, in Nigeria, there's much tougher regulation, but as the governments also get more flexible in term and to grips with the regulation of mobile money, I think that goes hand in hand with scaling the off-grid solutions. And then there is also the government incentives as well. So, for example, in Kenya and most of East Africa, there are exemptions on taxation for bringing and supplying the solar products. So that certainly helps, and other governments need to catch up on that. And then finally, it's the appetite for risk. Because foreign currency kind of exposure is also quite important, and what I said with what happened to places like Zambia, Nigeria last year. So how can the investors be hedged in terms of the foreign currency exposure. So these and there are mechanisms to do that. So it's really where I would say at the inflection point where many of these sort of roadblocks have been addressed, and now it's really the time for exponential growth. Of course, COVID came in between, but also despite COVID, there have been some relief funding mechanisms that are currently in place that are helping companies like myself and Yongwas to still continue operating. So really, that's how we are approaching the barriers to scaling up.
Yongwa?
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you. Yeah, that's the other great question. So if I may take the experience of Altec, because we started like from the very grassroots level, as we started distributing, we started our company with 50 pieces of solar lanterns, and now we are talking about hundreds, 220,000, the solar lanterns we have so far been able to connect to distribute. So the experience has been, for example, by the time you start thinking about helping these off-grid and electrify, and if I may start with off-grid household living in the rural settings, these people really, they are badly in need of the solutions. The purchasing power of most of these people is still very low. Although these people are using the very traditional toxic and expensive sources of energies, but sometimes because they don't do like the family budget or budgeting, sometimes they don't also understand that they're spending a lot of money to those toxic and traditional expensive sources of energies. So here, the one way of coping with this ability to pay, I'm talking about the ability to pay, is about educating these people, the household, about distinguishing their needs versus their wants. Because sometimes they happen to spend a lot of money on the wants while letting the needs like lighting and cell phone charging and other basic needs in terms of clean and reliable energy. Sometimes they will not consider this as the basic need. So that's one. But again, for small entrepreneurs or young entrepreneurs, when they are starting, we have been suffering, for example, in the DRC, up to this very moment, the financial institutions, the local banks, local microfinance institutions do not understand or even accept the business models we are putting in place to enable poor and electrify the household to get access to our solutions. Imagine, for example, for Altec, we have, for solar lanterns, we are putting in place a pay plan of 3 months, where the customer will pay the down payment of $3 and will be paying $1 every day within 57 days to cover the amount of $57 US. And for entry-level lighting solutions with the 4 bulbs, here we are putting in place a pay plan of 24 months. And the customer will just give the down payment of $20 and will keep on paying $10 within 24 months. And for solar home systems, we are putting in place pay plans of 12, 24, up to 36 months. So this risk here, the local banks, the local financial institutions are not really, are not being comfortable with the kind of pay plans and the risk we are taking. So the other great job we are doing in the process is to make sure to enable these people to share with them the data that, look, you've been neglecting these people for decades, but look, these people are being able to finish their payment for our solar solutions. So this is the other way also we are like enabling the financial institutions to understand, it doesn't matter of educating people to effectively, properly use their money by distinguishing the need and versus the wants. So we are also doing this great job. And yes, as far as the government incentives are concerned, really for a number of years now, the government authorities were like focusing on the centralization. They were thinking that for the case of the DRC, if they talk about power, electricity, this should only mean getting the power from the Inga Dam to other house to connect other households in other provinces of the country. But now we have put in place an association. This association is bringing together the companies operating in the sector. And we do call this Azure, Association Congolaise pour les énergies renouvelables décentralisées. Here we are advocating, we are really close to the government authorities. We are even, the last year we had a workshop with the president, the current president of the Democratic Republic of Congo. And even last, the funding for rural electrification, we call it FOMWINDA, and we proposed this solution to the president. Now the government authorities are now understanding that for us to be able to enable poor off-grid households, millions of these now, we need to adopt for decentralized systems. We need to adopt also the solar home, independent individual solar home system. Now this is it's now being understood. We are now, talking the same language. But when we started, it wasn't easy because most of them were just focusing on the, hydroelectric plant, mini plant. This is what they were really understanding at the electricity. But now, as we are powering these appliances like televisions of, from 24 to 43 inches, we are also powering air clippers, we are powering fans, we are powering a number of appliances. Now they are understanding. Now we are talking really, we are communicating the same language. So we have, and now the other area where we are focusing is now to sensitize, the local financial institutions, the local banks to understand that if we are to enable people to get access to solar solutions or modern energy solutions, this is the way to go. And some banks are now getting the concept, like Equity Bank, BCDC, they are now getting the concept, but it wasn't easy for them to fund like a business models of 36 months where customers will be paying progressively. It wasn't easy, and it's not even easy. And again, the interest rate, when you approach these banks, they are asking for first of all, they will ask you for the mortgage of 100% of the value, for which you are requesting for the loan. If, for example, you are looking for example, 100K, they will all ask you to deposit the other 100K into the bank account for you to get access to the other 100K. And when you consider the interest, they will start at 17% per annum, up to 22% per annum. And all these are the barriers which are preventing local entrepreneurs from, emerging and getting interested in the sector. But we are negotiating thanks to the Azure.
Thanks so much, Yongwa. I just need to sort of close it.
We are also advising the minister of hydraulic resources. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yongwa. I think it's a very powerful example you've given of how do you scale. And I think, whether it's from consumer behaviors in your communities, that there are these sustainable energy sources, to actually providing solutions on the ground, technically, that through entrepreneurs like yourself and Sneha, but then really building through that the crowdsourcing from people like Stephanie, like Stephen, packaged with the vision of Lisa, it is a pathway forward. We're not saying it is the solution to all of clean energy, but if you want something very concrete to be able to do immediately to meet the needs, I think Yongwa's comments were very powerful. It's about re-educating the entire system, from people, from governments to financiers, that there is this path forward that you can scale. And I hope what people, participants take away from this is that through innovations, you can have immediate outcomes by your decisions to support people like Yongwa, like Sneha, and that you can do that directly with your own money. And I think that is empowering. When we look at this decade of action, you see people feeling helpless, lost. What will the pandemic do? Well, equity, but you have solutions here. You have people here who are pioneering from the ground to actually provide access to energy, from investors looking to crowd in. And to answer that last question of institutional capital, I think they have to be part of that solution. I think that exactly as Yongwa said, how he's looking to educate governments and local banks, this ecosystem here is trying to do the same with institutional investors in the UK and also globally, to have confidence in the systems. We heard, we have a partner organization, International Finance Corporation, and they were talking about this exact model as something they need to be starting to be open, to be more creative. But you need the proof points. We always say that in P4G, you need to see it actually works. And so what you have here with this wonderful ecosystem and example is how it works in practice. So thank you to the participants for the excellent questions, and thank you for the excellent panelists for answering the questions in real time and providing a perspective that really we want to see, Stephen, really be showcased, right, all the way through to COP26, that this can be done through different actors all working together. So really appreciate the opportunity for Energize Africa. Thank you for hosting us, Lisa. And thank you all as pioneers for inspiring us about a better future for all. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Thanks for chairing, and thanks all the other panelists. Brilliant. Speak to you soon.
Bye.